take a look at that kitty cat on the cover. I'm so excited to ask you to pose some good questions to Bob this evening. Now, another bonus is this Friday, he's going to come into Malaprops and he's going to sign and personalize books purchased from Malaprops. So if you can't get to the store, you can order online and use the order comments field to tell us to whom the book should be signed. For example, to my dear friend, our newest cat is Toasty, to Toasty, keep on scratching. So if that's how you want it personalized, I'm delighted to have the chance to talk this evening with R.R. Davis and his book, The Various Stages of a Garden Well Kept. Thank you, Bob, for being here.
Thank you. This is exciting for me. I'm going to start with the cover of the book. Let me hold it up there. Woo! It is a nice cover. I love the artwork, and please judge a book by its cover. That's all I can say.
I heartily endorse that message because I just think it looks great. Now, you're an artist, so tell me, when you were thinking about maybe how you thought this book cover might look, what were the things that were coming to your mind? Because, of course, a garden well kept, it could be a metaphor if you think about it, and it can be literal. So what were you thinking of in terms of the visuals and the art as you were writing and thinking of the book cover?
Well, you're right. It's both a metaphor and literally a garden in the book, because the book kind of centers around a garden, which I'll get to later on. The cover. Okay, so the book isn't really about a cat, but my publisher thinks it's about a cat. She loves it, and so the cat makes an appearance here and there. But I like sitting there. It's on, actually, I guess, a Grecian island, and you can see the boat at the bottom sailing across to America with my grandmother on it. So it kind of covers the basics of the story, and just visually, I love it. It's a good piece of work.
When you were working on your book, were there some visuals that came to mind that you found being an artist really helped you develop with your writing?
No, I don't know. When you write, and I think most people will say this, when you write, you are in that place. All right. So this story, a lot of it takes place in Akron, Ohio. And so that's where I am while I'm writing it. I can picture the house. I can picture the coffee shop, the street, wherever it is. So it's there. Not really as in I'm going to do some art with it, though. And I am an artist, and I stopped doing a lot of my art when the pandemic came around. It was like, well, I don't know where I'm going to sell it. So I continue with my writing instead.
So the pandemic, that's something that we often asked our guests for author events, is that the pandemic, how did it affect you? What did it do to your creative processes?
I'm going to say it really didn't. It didn't really stop me from doing anything except walking around with a mask on all the time, but that's about it. That was fun. Still is.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. So, no, it didn't make a real difference, because, writing, anybody who's a writer knows it's a lonely art. You're by yourself anyway.
Right. Yeah. Now, this is your debut. So what was it like to make that first foray into publishing a book?
I just started going with the story, and actually, I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to work. But as I got the characters going, I don't know. I just thought, hey, this is a good story. I just went with it. I was like, okay. And then I have to get it published. I was like, I don't know how you even publish a book. So that was a lot of fun. That took about a year to find somebody and get going with that.
Yeah. Well, I know that somebody in the audience is hoping for some good advice. So what is some good advice that you have for people who are doing what you did, which is really not very easy, and that's getting their first book published.
Yeah, well, it's like this. You be persistent. I mean, I know I have friends who just go to Amazon or whatever and self-publish, which is fine. But I wanted a publisher just to make me feel better, like, oh, somebody does want it. So I sent it out to every publisher I could find, all the independent ones, and
Right.
got an answer from them. It just took a lot of persistence. Because
So
I realized most publishers get 100 different people a month, trying to get the 3 books they publish for the year.
yeah, so did you doesn't sound like you ever got discouraged.
Nah, I'm used to I'm used to rejection. So
You're an
it doesn't
artist.
bother me.
You've
Yeah,
been there.
of course. Yeah, you
Did you
can't
have
get
some
discouraged. If you believe in yourself, just keep going. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think some people really struggle with kind of having confidence in the face of rejection, but then there are other artists and other authors that keep their rejection letters. Judy Blume, for example, talks, does a whole little segment in Masterclass on and reads from rejection letters and reviews. So you're very sanguine. I like it.
Yeah, I save all my rejection emails.
I see. Yes. Okay. Oh, you do. You save
I'm a
them.
big fan of the form letter. Yes.
Well, so what made you decide ultimately to write the story? Why this story and why now?
Okay, so I've heard little bits of my grandmother's story from my mom. When my mom was young, because my grandmother died young, and so I got little bits, but hardly anything. I was like, "Wow, this is kind of cool." This lady came from Greece, hung out for a while, and died. I was like, but I didn't really know the real story behind it until an old girlfriend who apparently my mother loved her and confided in her in a way that she did not confide in any of us kids. And it was like, really? She told you that? And so now the story is far more interesting to me. And so I went with it's like, well, there's got to be something there.
So
Yeah,
why did you decide to write at this point in your professional life?
I don't know. I always wrote little short stories. I was a storyteller at like summer camp type things, and I love
Okay.
doing that and coming up with my own short, very humorous stories. Storytelling, oral telling is a huge different thing than writing for me. Because I tend to be very humorous in my storytelling. But when I'm writing, it's a little bit different, but I enjoy doing that. Just a little at a time here and there. I was told, well, you're pretty good at that, Bob. It's like, all right.
Well,
Yeah.
did you have someone that you bounced your first draft off of?
Um, Actually, the girl who my mother confided in, she was the first one I sent it to.
Really?
And she said, wow, that's really confusing, Bob. I was like, I'll go back to it. Because, and I can see why she said it. It's like, well, the chapters weren't meshing because I took like Irene Gaspari, who's the original character in there. I took her and interspersed her with Herman K. George, another major character, but they're 100 years apart. So how do you put that in the book, jumping back and forth and having it make sense?
Right.
So that was a big challenge, and the publishers really helped with that. My editors, they were just like, oh, let's do a little revising, shall we? And so it's like, stop it, you're killing me. But yeah, so that made it work for me. It made it flow, and then the cat. The cat was my last character, and
Really?
I threw her in there, and it's just a real cat. My cat who's probably running around here somewhere, and I used her because there's some death going on in this, and a bit of death actually. not like gruesome death, but people die, people born. It's just more of a spiritual side, and that's what the cat is. The cat ends up being a spiritual guide, taking you on the journey of people in the past with people in the present. And so I think that's
I like that.
a little
I like that
interesting.
role for a cat.
Yeah, what else would it be, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, would
Yeah.
you like to read a little bit from your book? I know you've got some characters that you're
I've
going
got
to
yes,
introduce.
and I got a lot more than we have time for. So
It's all
I'm gonna
right.
start with I'm gonna start with Irene Gaspari, who is from Greece, and in 1920 she decided to immigrate to America. All right, just came on her own for an arranged marriage, somebody she never met, which was furthered it on. It's like, whoa, cool! I found that in the Ellis Island records, so that was kind of cool to see. She left, and most of her stories is in the form of letters to her friend Martha, who's back in Greece. And so, what was that noise? All right. So this is actually her intro before she's writing a letter. This is the last day that she's about to leave Greece. Summer 1920. Early this morning, as the sun tosses around the idea of coming up over the horizon, and the sea does calmly lay in wait for the new day's winds to toss its facade into a rhythmic frenzy. I sit one last time, relaxing in my favorite cafe overlooking the street, soaking in the scenes of my final day in Greece. I've sat in this cafe, the only cafe in my village, so often that I know every rock in the wall, every crack in the floor, and every patron who ever walked through the door. Since I was a young girl hiding behind my mother as she sat in this cafe with the other women of the village, in a spare moment stolen from their life's endless chores. I loved to watch the village come to life in those first waking hours of the day. My memories are filled with the warmth of the old wooden tables and chairs that became our favorite perches, each table bearing the stories of countless patrons as they ate their way through life, each chair worn smooth by an endless line of bottoms sliding in and out of their temporary resting spot. I can still see the old women, adorned with their headscarves, aprons, full skirts, and billowing blouses cinched around their waists with beautiful bands of fabric to accentuate the last vestiges of their womanly figures as they transformed into the thickened bodies of maturing matrons. I basked in their scents of lavender and iris, applied heavily in desperate acts of vanity to transcend themselves into the ethereal goddesses they once were. I watched, mesmerized, as the aged hands moved expressively and gracefully, spilling out the day's gossip and the night's secrets. I was to become one of these women one day. I too would be sitting with the other girls grown old, content in my preordained station in life, while the world goes on as it always has. But even as a small girl, I felt there was something else awaiting me. And with that secret knowledge, I would run off from the old woman gathering and skip around the corner out into the street. Free of the burdens and the reservations of an adult, I watched wide-eyed as life in the streets unfolded before me. I recall seeing the fishermen who trolled the waters throughout the night, rolling their early morning catch trailed by the scent of the sea down the old roadway to see what they might get at market price. I watched in fascination at the man who ran the cafe, dressed in his handsome black vest and his merchant's apron, which tied around his waist. Covered in the morning's food stains, as he stood outside the cafe door, hoping to drum up business. I followed stray cats down the side streets as they slid through secret places in their mysterious lives. I ran to find my friend Martha, and together, as always, we ran to the water's edge and threw stones at the sea. And sometimes I looked out at the Aegean and watched in wonder as the monstrous ships passed by on their way to the Americas. That, the sighting of these ships, more than anything, took that young girl who was the beginning of this young woman to the start of this new adventure.
Well, I really thought that was an amazing window into the mind of a young woman. What were some of the stories, or what did you start with in terms of the basics of who Irene Gaspari was?
Okay, well, I knew she came to the US when she was 19, something like that. Young, I had no idea really, and why she left. I knew she had $26 in her pocket. I knew she was out to meet the prearranged husband, and I knew she was Greek. That's what I knew. I found the name of the ship, how many passengers were on it, and a little blurb of what she looked like 5'6", darker skin, dark hair, dark eyes. So that's really what I knew about her right there. And I just imagined, you imagine, what do you think? You're going off from your family, your friends, going to another place, another world, and that world is far away back in the 20s. It's a 5-week trip across the ocean.
That's amazing. I mean, just what it would take to make that journey and then to go somewhere completely unknown, except for probably in stories, maybe you heard from other people or something, but just really not much. And then going into a marriage, a prearranged marriage. Now that talk about a different country. A prearranged marriage is like a different country in many ways.
Right. And when you get here, is the man going to meet her, or will she be abandoned?
Right. Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah. So you said you found some information in the Ellis Island documents, right? In the records?
Right.
What was that process like for you doing that research?
Well, the internet's great. Yeah. I got on the Ellis Island website and just looked up the year, threw in the name, and don't you know, it popped up. And you could actually order, and I did, copies of the manifests of the ship she was on with her name and everything about her that they would record.
That's real.
Yeah.
That must have been a really fascinating moment to just see the documents on the internet of Irene.
It was, and beyond that, even I found the house she lived in South Akron, and I found pictures still standing. I was like, "Whoa, that's where she moved to. That's where she raised her kids, right there. My mother grew up there when she was young. All these things about it. I looked it up, on Zillow because why wouldn't you? And it just sold in March for $30,000. So it's a really outstanding neighborhood. It's gone through some bad times.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like,
sometimes when I think about parts of Ohio, I can't help but think of Chrissy Hind of the Pretenders.
right.
And that song and, her memoir about growing up and kind of that Rust Belt experience. Now, of course, that's decades and decades away from Irene, but there's something really iconic about the immigrant experience in that area of the United States. And I wonder if did you have other family stories to draw on to kind of give you more of a sense of what life was like?
Not for her. I mean, I looked up, I found the church she went to, the Greek Orthodox Church, and who ran it, who was the priest there at the time. I found all this stuff up, which is kind of cool. I had to write to them and say, hey, by the way, so that was fun. but I use that same area. It's right by the Firestone plant, you know, and which was the biggest one there at the time. And I look at that, and then when I come into the future, well, as the next generation start growing up, you hear about it during World War II, what it's like, what are the people there like, you know, it's that whole changing of this city, which I found fascinating. You know, I lived there for a while, and I was like, wow. I looked out my window, and there's the old rubber factories kind of on the horizon. So
It
yeah,
really was important in the working class and growing middle class lives of a lot of millions of people in this country and their children. And so she's really emblematic and representative of a story in the United States. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean that's what we're built on, right? And we still are.
Right.
Yeah.
So, is there another character that you'd like to introduce us to?
Oh, let me think now because we're gonna run out of time. So that's fine. I don't care. Let's go to Marietta. Marietta is the daughter of Irene, and she's important because she's kind of where Irene is sort of the foundation blocks of the story. Marietta is more the backbone. She's what, you know, ties everybody together, the three different generations that are represented. And with her, I start when she's 6 years old. And we first actually meet her when she's like 80 something. And then it goes back to, like I said, it's jumbled in time. Goes back to when she's 6. Here's a quick little excerpt about a 6-year-old Marietta. This would be 1929, 1930. I like to sit in the garden when I am sad. Mama says the garden is the place to heal the sickness of your heart. Her heart must be real sick, because when she first got sick, she sat in the back corner of the garden all day for 3 days, until she was not able to stay outside any longer. Now that Mama has to stay in bed, I have taken over the job as the garden sitter. I watch the beans grow and the beetles land on the squash flowers. Pretty soon, me and Mama will be out here with my basket, picking the beans for dinner. Sometimes she puts them in jars for the winter, but I don't help with that. Once, I found a big green caterpillar in the garden. I named her BB. Mama said we had to kill her because she would eat all our tomatoes. I hid her in the little pocket Mama sewed into my dress so she wouldn't have to be killed. Later that day, I reached into my pocket to play with BB, but she was squished. I buried her in the garden when Mama wasn't looking. I put some tomato plant leaves in her grave and with her in case she woke up and was hungry. I said a little poem to her after I covered her with dirt and pretty stone. So that was Marietta as a young child. And as she goes through the young child period, it's full of stories, you know, a lot of metaphors. She's very poetic, very imaginative, really centers around that garden. Her mother in the garden with her would tell her stories, which she would repeat and say, oh, this is a story I got from my mom when I was young. And so you'd hear all that. Though as the story goes, things happen in Marietta's life that change her. And she's no longer that happy, imaginative little girl, but becomes a little more emotionally closed up. You know, her two sons look at her and they're like, oh yeah, she has no emotions at all. You know, because they don't see what she used to be.
Right. That's what's so powerful about that passage that you read. I was very moved by it because I can really see the actions of a very sensitive child, but also when it doesn't really understand death,
Right.
and that is very moving way you crafted it. When you were creating these characters, or maybe there's a particular passage that you think of, what was it like to write parts like that? What was your inspiration for maybe what you just read or the other?
You know, I used to work with pre-K kids and kindergartners, and you know what they think, you know what they're like, and what a kind of a simple outlook they have on life. And so I
Yeah.
kind of went with that, and just put myself in their place. I'm pretty childish myself, I have to say. Um, and I see the world in a lot of simple ways. And I know there's different, of course, adults might say one thing, a kid would say something else, but who's right? Sometimes I hope it's the kid and not the adult in the way they see the world. And that's how she is, her first half of the book, really. Real simple stories of how she sees it, how she sees death. It continues on,
Right.
as she gets moved around to different families, whatever happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you set that up so well, and I love that you chose that passage. A decision to, like you were talking about, the structure of the book moves in time and really takes us through several decades. How did you settle on that approach? Was that something you knew you were going to do from the beginning, or did it emerge as you were writing?
Um, I think it's all the same. 1920 is the same as 2010. It's just different aspects. You can say that time, people would say, oh, time isn't really linear, but it's all happening. And it's kind of what I looked at with it. With the introduction of the cat sees, the cat 2010 sees Irene when she was young. She sees a young Marietta. She sees these spiritual, I don't know, vestiges of them. So
Yeah.
it's, I tried hard to make time just kind of mixed together. I don't really think it should be separated.
Well, that's an interesting writing challenge and structural challenge and editing challenge too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, but I'm not an editor. I don't care. That's their problem.
Well, I hope you wouldn't mind reading another little passage and
Oh, sure.
introducing another character to us.
All right, I had one about Herman K. George. Herman K. George is the character that is basically based on myself. Okay, and he's modern time, single guy in his 40s, and he's searching in life. He's searching for the perfect relationship, the perfect coffee house. He's a starving artist. It's like, and he's pretty laid back in his approach to the world. All right. So now that I've mixed all this up, I've got a longer one, but I think I'm going to quit that. The longer one was a story, and there's a lot of stories within the book about internet dating. So that's the modern day romance as opposed to the arranged marriage.
I see.
And so I include a lot of internet dates which are never successful, very humorous, and all from my own experience. So I was like, yeah, this is another good one.
Well, before
So,
you start reading, let me encourage the audience to send us any questions that you might have for Bob, and we'll get to as many as we can. I already see one, and we certainly will get to that. And if you have a question, you can email it to us at virtualqa.com, or you can log into YouTube and post it in the chat. You could, if you could please, start that with the Q. And I believe I said this earlier, but just to let you know, this Friday, Bob is going to be at Malaprop signing and personalizing. So if you want to get your order in advance, so you can pick it up at your leisure, you can order online or give us a call at the store, or you could come in the store on Friday at some time, and maybe you'll get a chance to chat with Bob for a minute or two, but
that
you'll
would be
get your
great. That would be great. Yeah.
clearly he's a very entertaining conversationalist, so I think you'll have a lot to talk about. I don't think that will be your prop.
All right. So, Herman K. George. I'll give you a quick reading here. This is typical of him, okay? He's in a coffee house. This is the coffee house called the Aphrodite. It used to be a Greek coffee house, now only by name. He says, I like to come here on my own with a book or a sketch pad to escape. Sometimes I come with Cindy. I gotta tell you this little side note. Cindy is his friend. It is a male who he calls Cindy. Longer story. Anyway, sometimes I will come with Cindy when he wants to hang out with me in public. The staff are pleasant and good looking, if a little on the fringe of society. I like it here because I rarely run into anyone I know. If I were a writer, I would bring my old Corona typewriter and hammer on the keys while enjoying the ding at the end of each line. I guess people would be amused and then annoyed by me as I cranked out my never-to-be-published novel. Instead, I rough out designs for never-to-be-sold paintings. Today, I watch the woman behind the counter. I am fascinated by the ease with which she moves, and sometimes I quietly lust after her. I'm quite comfortable with our relationship, hers and mine, because it doesn't actually exist. Nothing can ever go wrong with us as a non-couple. I watch her flirt with her customers, both male and female, but I never actually see a boyfriend type person visiting her. Occasionally, I hear her yelling at some guy called Mike in the back room. The cook, the owner, her husband, I've never actually seen her Mike. I would feel oddly uncomfortable bringing a date here. I know the door between the barista woman and myself isn't really open, but I feel I would completely board it up if she saw me in a relationship. Strange, I know. So that's kind of the way Herman thinks right there.
Well, I think that's a good window into the observer, the person who's creative and who's kind of taking it in, almost like they're in their own story, so to speak.
Yeah. And I have one more reading I can do here.
Great.
And this is my cat. Since we started with the cat, we'll do this little cat thing. Frieda Kahlo, spring 2010. I have to tell you a little precursor to this. Frieda is looking for a new home. Okay, she no longer has a place to live. She's kind of gone feral for a month or two, for reasons you'll learn later. Here she comes again, her quiet, methodical ways making her extremely predictable. She does not make the same noises at me as Hello Pat did. She does not take much notice of me. Petting time is a lost memory from days gone by. I do not feel compelled to seek out her attention, but I enjoy sharing my space with her. I'm closed off from her sleeping room and waved off the table and counters with a sway of her bony hand laced with blue lines. My food bowl is kept full, and for that I am grateful. Getting in and out of the house is a bit of a conundrum. One must wait for the right moment when the door is opened by the old woman. It is possible she might not notice my comings and goings. I fear my tail or head might be caught in the door. There are times when I must meow for an extraordinarily long time to get her attention. One day, I discovered the old woman, a pile of old blankets crumbled on the floor. She looked at me and made awkward noises in a dark, husky voice. I'd never before heard her make such noises and was taken aback by her sound. This day, I am trapped inside the house. The woman has not opened the door. I found a place in a small room in the basement where I must frequently go to urinate, but it is not my preference. It smells strongly of ammonia or of bleach, depending on who has visited the room last. When will the door open? When will the door open? Oh, my sweet bladder. There's a little cat thought there for you.
I love a good cat thought
I
because
guess.
I'm always wondering. I have 4 cats, and I'm wondering sometimes when I look in their eyes, kind of see the intelligence and the wheels spinning there. So I really appreciate you getting into the mind of cat.
Yeah, that was a simple little entry of hers, as she meets the old woman.
Right.
So
So
right.
we have a question here from Richard, and
Okay.
Richard wants to know, how do you feel about the creative process of writing versus the process of publishing?
Well, the ideas are the fun parts. The the publishing part is a little more of a chore, let's say that. So, okay, my publisher says, I don't like this character. Get rid of them. And I did one, and it's like, oh, I don't want to lose him. But I did. I wrote him out of the book. So it's like, well, I got to fix it up and kind of go through and patch this and patch that. It's more of a homework assignment, whereas the original writing is more of a woohoo, and you just go for it and have fun. You're still at recess then.
So as you were writing, did you ever experience times where you really felt like you were on a roll and things were really going, and then sometimes it wasn't? Or was this a pretty seamless first draft and subsequent drafts that you were able to produce?
Well, that's funny, because on this book, I felt I was on a roll all the time. I'm in the middle of writing another book because I just keep on writing, and I just put that thing down. I was like, I don't know where it's going. So it's like, not as thrilling for me. But on this book, there's more of a stream of consciousness writing. As I wrote about a character, and that's my favorite part of writing, is just getting on the keyboard and just writing about a character in whichever way my mind goes and creating him or her. And when I'm done, I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, Bob, what were you thinking? And I throw about half of it away and thinking, well, I better get rid of that before the publisher does, And so sort of my own editing, but you got to have a lot out there and then throw a lot of it away.
All right. Well, you seem like you're okay with that winnowing out process.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. I have to say, a funny thing the publishers did. The original woman who worked with me, very good. I really enjoyed her. She had some really great things to say. And I'm like, all right, I'll change that. All right, I'll change. She doesn't like that wording. It's not consistent with the character, whatever she say. And then the next woman who works for the company looks at it and goes, well, I was all right with that. I think you should. I'm like, oh, you guys, you're killing me. Yeah.
So what happened? Did you stick with the changes, or did you have to change?
Sometimes I would just say to them, either way you like it, I'm okay. Because I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's still the same story. My changes I was happy with, and my original I was happy with. And so there's that.
All right.
They let me keep the cuss words in there. my PG-13 parts. As I told somebody, you want a hot, steamy sex story? It's not there, but you can get kind of the next morning review from a character.
I see. Okay. Well, all right.
Yeah.
Audience, you're on notice of what kind of book you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Another question. This question is from John, and
Okay.
John says, firstly, love the book, ! I just wanted to ask how you found it writing from all the female perspectives in the novel. I know some male writers find it difficult, but you seem to be able to shift perspectives very naturally.
Well, that's a big compliment. Thank you for that. We're all kind of the same, aren't we? I don't know. I'd say most of my friends have been women, especially growing up. So I kind of know more how women think. It's like I couldn't really write the perspective like Mr. Macho Man as well.
So you didn't really find that there was any kind of, I don't know, or did you have, you did have an initial female reader. Did you ever get any feedback to say, no, that is not what?
No, but I did have, okay. I'll just tell you one line, which was deleted because my publisher, who was British, was like, and I think she's British. She doesn't think that's right. Where the character just turns to her love interest and just says, I'm tired of waiting and waiting. Why don't we fuck? Very blatant and blunt, just like that. And the woman is like, nobody says that. And I'm like, well, they do. It's like, okay, I'll change it and put it. The next editor looked at it and she's like, I liked it before when you just it's like, I was like, you guys do what you want with it. Yeah. So there's my PG-13.
And the final verdict was PG-13?
But it was taken to a more easy way of doing it.
I see. Okay.
A little more subtlety. Yeah.
A little more subtle.
I liked it for the character because she was a character that I just really disliked. So because there are people in life you don't like, and I started writing her character, and it's like, and I think of when I do a character, I think of certain people, and I put them together, and maybe not just one, but I'll take a few people, put them together, and make this character. And she just turned out to be, in my mind, evil. But in somebody else, they loved her.
Right.
Who's to say? Who's to
So,
say?
did you find it so when you're crafting characters, you have people in mind who have particular characteristics or say particular things? That's a part of your approach?
I do. For instance, Herman's brother is called Richard. Okay, Richard, he's a little more in the Asperger scale, I think. And he is a character from a couple different roommates I've had in the past. Not necessarily on that scale, but just taking the way they act, and putting them together. This guy's just sort of like very, I don't know, he's not good with society. He's not a good social interactor. As I said in the one chapter, I was like, Richard's the kind of guy who at a party will corner somebody and talk to them until they're so bored that they just die. That's what he was.
Can't get a word in.
Can't get a word in.
Right,
yeah, and he's just like not real exciting, but it keeps going.
Right, right. We've had those moments where we're trapped for sure. It's rough. It's rough.
Oh yeah, and when you find you're the one trapping somebody, you're like, oh, see ya. It's like
right. Yeah, either side's not good.
Right.
That realization. How many people who trap someone in a conversation, or it's just a one-way conversation, ever have that realization? I would love to know, but definitely we've all been there and been trapped. That's for sure.
Oh,
I love people's advice about exit strategies for being trapped in conversations. What do you do? What do you actually do, Bob?
Well, it's funny because I was one of these situations about 3 days ago, and I was at work, and this guy one of my patients would not stop talking. He's just like, oh. And so I got on my phone and I had to text the coworker. I said, come tell me I have to go somewhere right now. He's just like,
There
it's
you
like,
go.
wait for her to come say, hey, Bob, let's go. We got to meet.
Well, that's a good exit strategy.
Whatever
I
you
like
can
that.
do. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. Sometimes you need to have a co-pilot to help you get out
Yeah,
of
that's
there. I
mostly
like
because I
that.
can't walk away from somebody who's talking to me. It's just like,
Oh, you
okay, I'm like,
can't.
we're over, but I have to, I don't know,
Gotcha.
I have to give them whatever.
So
My,
had you already planned on writing another book while you were working on this, or when did your
oh,
second
yeah.
book come in?
Yeah, we
What
got a
was that?
second book written, waiting to see if it gets published or not. You know, I gave it to the same publisher and they liked it. I don't know if they're interested in publishing because I see it as something completely different. You know, it's a whole different genre, I think.
Okay.
So, but then I'm writing two other ones right now, kind of back and forth.
So you're actually writing two different books at the
Yeah,
same
that's hard.
time?
Yeah. And I pick one up and start writing, and then I'm off somewhere and thinking about the other book. It's like, oh, yeah.
Wow.
I'm not very focused. I might say that. It's a good day when I go to a coffee house, which I do. That's where I write. And I
So
sit down,
you
I
do
start
that, yeah.
just enough distractions in the place to keep me going. Nobody I know to come say something to me and interrupt me. You know, I can't go to the next room and start a project. I'm stuck there.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little bit about what your book your second book may
Yeah,
be
that's a
about?
good one. I love the book actually. Um, I've got two different names for it. One is Squid Boy and Raven Girl, and the other name is Monsters in Us All. Okay, I don't know which way to go on it. It's about a small town in Newfoundland, up in Canada, and it's a small village that used to be in existence called Davis Inlet, and this was all Native Canadians, First Nation people from the Innu tribe, and they were all moved there by the government. Horrible conditions. They had no plumbing, no water, no, you know, it's just awful. But that's where they were moved to make a new town. And that town actually, I saw a news story on it in 1993, maybe. Had a big news story because they had an epidemic of suicides, of gasoline sniffing, of alcoholism, really bad. I mean, it's a small town of maybe 500 people and horrible conditions. You know, since then, the town has been moved. So it's just a ghost village there now, the ghost town. So I kind of like the setting. And so I have it about a little boy, a 10 or 12-year-old boy. It's all in his viewpoint, and his father from Scotland and his little brother. His mom, an Innu woman, has died before the story started. And it's him kind of a year in his life growing up with a very superstitious father and, you know, brother who gets involved with the unfortunate, you know, drug abuse and substance abuse of the island. And so it's I don't know. It's about the monsters we have inside us. You know, the what we see, how we think, what we feel.
And where is this actual place again, this location?
This is in Labrador, Newfoundland, up on the coast in Canada, eastern end of Canada. It's like you go to those little villages and you go in there and there's no roads there. You got to get there by boat or by plane, by whatever kind of plane. So it's kind of a remote area. I found it real interesting. I just wrote a short story first, you know, and it's like after I wrote the story, kind of what it was about, then I started researching the area and it's like, oh, that town fits for the story, you know, and went for there.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Of course, Pope Francis is in Canada right now doing what they're calling an apology tour to the First Nations, all the indigenous peoples who have been raising deep concerns about how Indigenous children and teenagers and their families were treated as a result of being forced into the residential schools, what we in the United States would call the boarding school system,
Right.
systems. And so the Catholic Church only ran about half of those, but the Pope has been there, was there, and I saw a lot of coverage about it today, apologizing for the terrible cruelty that the indigenous populations experienced as a result of being subjected to really the worst conditions imaginable in these residential schools. So I think it's a very timely
Well, and
story
it's like
too.
that. It's like that in all over the world. You know, your native peoples there, colonization came in, treated them like crap. You know.
Right. Yes, yes, absolutely. And then you said that we're about to wrap up, so it doesn't look like we've got any more questions, but I certainly would like a little bit more about these other two books. Are they in the such a nascent stage you can't really talk about it, or where
Oh, I can talk
what
about
very
anything. I don't
basically are
care.
those about?
Okay, these other two I'm working on. One is it's up to about 50,000 words now. You know, I aim for like 70 to 80,000. All right. And this is about, I work in a nursing home, so that's what it's about, a nursing home. And just focuses on the different characters. Again, it's kind of character based. And within it, there's possibly murder. You know, it's kind of like, oh, what's going on there? But it just kind of focuses on each individual and their problems they're having. And that takes place up in Cleveland, Ohio. And the other one, it's a little more still in my head, but it takes place right where I'm at. Well, kind of out further, maybe Western North Carolina, a little nowhere place. It's about a little girl, about a 6-year-old girl, her father and mother. It's about the autistic kid who lives nearby. They live on a lake, a lot of woods around there, and what happens to them. And it's kind of a plays with your head type thing.
Okay. Well, boy, those are
it's
good.
hard to describe because it's not written all the way.
Not done yet, but those are tantalizing clues to
Ooh,
where
yeah.
you are, and that's wonderful. I want to thank you so much for your time this evening. It's really been a pleasure to hear you read. My colleague Stephanie knows that I love author reading, so you really brought it this evening, and I want to thank you so much, Bob. We've been speaking this evening to Robert R. Davis, and his debut novel is The Various Stages of a Garden Well Kept. He'll be at the bookstore on Friday. Haven't quite settled the time yet, but definitely he'll be signing and personalizing books. Early afternoon.
Early
Okay.
afternoon Friday.
That's right, early afternoon. So
Right.
you can also order online and request that you get your book signed and or personalized if you'd like it. Robert R. Davis, Bob, thank you so much for joining us for this virtual author event with Malaprops. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and hear you read.
Oh, well, I really appreciate getting the chance to do this. This is fun.
Congratulations.
And you're not scary to talk to on a computer.
Well, good. You had me with a cat on the cover. Well, we hit it off immediately.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that's
hope you get a chance to read it too if you haven't.
wonderful. I look forward to it. The Various Stages of a Garden Well Kept. R.R.
Right.
Davis.
There it
Thank
is.
you so much. And a great cover.
That's great. Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Couple little they also have a couple little illustrations within it somebody did, which I cannot even find at the moment. Well, there's one. A picture of the cat watching the butterflies. A lot of stuff from the garden itself.
So sweet. Kitty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, thanks a lot. I sure appreciate it.